Wednesday, December the 17th, 2008. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, no matter where you may be. My name is Irv Homer, and we're broadcasting from irvhomer.com. If you care to check my website, www.irvhomer.com. Email address is evilerv@irvhomer.com. We do this program Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 o'clock. That's Eastern Standard Time. And during the day on commercial radio on WBCB 1490 AM, Levittown, Mercer, and Burlington County. That's Monday through Friday from 1 to 2. And we try to make sense and ask questions that make comfortable people uncomfortable. One of the things I think of the First Amendment and the Constitution of the United States is that it makes comfortable people uncomfortable. And many of the time I've been uncomfortable recognizing the fact that you are entitled to speak out as long as you know no physical or bodily harm, or in fact anticipate creating physical or bodily harm. Little things that bother me that may not bother many folks, but one thing occurred last night, and I know that some people may get offended and some people may not. But with this First Amendment, you're entitled to speak out, and on this program, I speak out and offer my opinion. When it is opinion, it's opinion. When it's fact, it's fact. This is my opinion. As you know, for those of you that don't know, I've been in the talk radio and television business for some 40 years. Probably longer than some of you folks are alive. Probably more than some of you folks remember. And when I say things to people who are not familiar with the events that happened in the past, they kind of go, "What? That really happened?" And I say, "Yeah." And they can't believe it because they can't conceive that the period of time that they've been on planet Earth and in the United States, they've never heard of it or never recognized it. For example, when Tom Brokaw wrote his book, was it he that wrote the book, The America's Greatest Generation, about World War II? And I point out to people, World War II, we fought for the freedom of the people in Germany and in the Axis powers, and we fought against the Japanese, and we did it with a segregated army. That's right. Blacks and whites did not fight together. It was a segregated army. And even until today, there is the feeling that segregation should be the way of the land. And yet when you point out to people, are you anti-American, Irving? My question is the truth anti-American? Is the truth anti-American, or do you deny the truth in the past and just go with the times and the conception that this is the way it is and it was never any other way? Could you picture today fighting in a segregated army where blacks and whites didn't sleep together, we didn't eat together, we didn't fight together? The whites fought the war and the blacks drove the trucks, worked in the kitchens. Oh, they had an initial Air Force. They had the Red Ball Express, which were made up of black truck drivers. And yet we were fighting to free people in Europe, and we were fighting to free people in the Pacific with a segregated army, an army of discrimination. And it took until 1965, some 20 years after the end of World War II, after many demonstrations and the Bull Connors and the Selma marches and the death of Martin Luther King, that black people were afforded an opportunity to integrate schools, colleges, the workplace, the law schools, the medical profession. And on today's program on WBCB, I spent an hour with Mark Howard, former anchor on Channel 6 in Philadelphia and Channel 3 in Philadelphia, and is retired. And I said to Mark that our business, you retire your body, but you never retire your mind. And people don't want to hear you're anti-American, you're this, you're that, you're the other thing. And the principles that made America great, while criticizing or pointing out that we did have a segregated army, is that our Constitution gives you the right to change things. Things that may be legal, but not constitutional. And so the Supreme Court, the law of the land, when cases are brought before it, established the constitutionality of a legal law. Slavery was legal. Segregation was legal. Gays were illegal. Sodomy was illegal. Blacks marrying whites was illegal. And so when the United States Supreme Court reviewed the Constitution of the United States, it said it may be legal, but it's not constitutional. It doesn't live up to the principles of what the Founding Fathers intended it to be, and so they gave room for change. A lot of people objected to change because they would like to see legal anti-gay laws. They would like to see legal slavery. They would like to see discrimination. And all of those things that were legal in the beginning of our great country were not constitutional. But there was a comfort zone, I guess, that gave superiority. There's a child in today's news whose name is Adolf Hitler II. The parents named that child Adolf Hitler II. And I believe it's the child's third birthday. Went to a bakery and wanted them to put on their happy birthday Adolf Hitler. You know, in the cream scroll that they make. And the baker refused to do it. And so I had a discussion with an individual this evening who was outraged. Oh, like I said, ladies and gentlemen, the First Amendment makes comfortable people uncomfortable. So you either have a free society or you don't. If that child, through its parents' love for the child, wanted to name the child Adolf Hitler II, it is their right to name that child Adolf Hitler II. I wouldn't name my child that. You probably wouldn't name yours. And so there was a big roustabout about, I said, you can't be comfortable when someone else does something that's not going to affect you one bit. And so today, there is a big hue and cry and a big rallying point that Saddam Obama, on January the 2nd, when he gets sworn in as President of the United States, he will want his full name used. That's his middle name.
What's both? Just because from what I was reading from Phil Berg's website and the other thing, what is his full name, real name?
Well, his name that he's known by now, legal name, is Barack Saddam Obama. What his real name was on his birth certificate, Phil knows. I don't know.
Because there was things saying he's Barry Soto or something like
Well, we'll discuss that with Phil when he comes. Hopefully, we'll have him on the air tomorrow on WBCB. And that's part of Philip Berg's
that. Yeah.
lawsuit, whether he had his real name changed or not. But he will be sworn in, by all indications, as Barack Saddam Obama. Now, he was named prior to the whole growth of Saddam Hussein in Iraq. Wasn't picked last week or 2 years ago or 8 years ago, 7 years ago. That was his name. A respected name 40-some years ago when he was born. And so some of the bloviators are going crazy. And like I said, the First Amendment, ladies and gentlemen, makes comfortable people uncomfortable. On a Philadelphia radio station, the largest talk station in the Philadelphia area, that doesn't enjoy an audience that it should enjoy because of its power. They don't have the ratings. They would love to have the ratings, but they don't have them. That's because they're boring. And you can get the same information from that radio station that you get from the newspaper. Read the newspaper. You don't have to listen to the station because they read from the newspaper and then say that the newspapers are too liberal. But if it wasn't for the newspapers... In fact, there are many talk show hosts who complain about the print media. But I remember doing radio for 25 years at one radio station. When I walked in, I used to go into the station, I swear, with a pad and a paper. That was my preparation. My boss said to me once, "Do you prepare for your program, Irving?" And I said, "Yeah." "Well, where's your papers?" I said, "They're here in my head." And this one gentleman, who shall remain nameless, I'll say Bernie Herman, loved the guy. He had all newspapers all over, and he had highlights on everything. And I mean, it was like, and Susan had papers all over the place, and Dominic Quinn of the Wall Street Journal. And all. What do you need all that stuff for? But you got a head, and they still do it today. Only today they've got 9 million computers in front of them and producers that give them information and news clips and sound bites and blah, 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 blah. There is no... See, if I were a program director of a talk radio station, I would ban anything during the program except the talk show host. Producer was not allowed to give me anything. You didn't have information over the internet, nothing. I want the talk show host to be the star. I don't want CNBC, MSNBC, C-SPAN, Fox. But you don't have that type of brilliance today behind the microphone. You've got 6 computers in front of you, producers that shove you information, makes you sound like you're a genius. They're getting fed this information right off the computer from the internet. And that's the information that you get, and you think they're geniuses. Well, sit in front of 6 televisions at the same time, and you'll be as smart as they are. We do have a telephone number, and we do have a chat room, ladies and gentlemen. And you can get on the chat room right now and answer your questions, take your comments. If you don't want me to comment, just put down there. Our telephone number is 215-253-8877. 215-253-8877. Let's go to Jim on the phone. Good evening, Jim.
Excuse me, sir. I know you're very learned, but I just wondered, isn't Barack's name Barack Hussein Obama?
I'm sorry, Barack Hussein Obama. I had a busy day today. You're right. It's Hussein.
Another thing, I tuned into your radio station you appear on in Bristol, BCB, and for the first 15 minutes I didn't hear you on there, so I assumed you weren't on there. That was yesterday. I tuned in probably about 1:10.
Oh, they had sold that time yesterday, Jim, prior to my getting on the station, and they had already sold that time. I don't know what was played during that period of time, but it was because they had pre-sold that before I went back on the air.
Unfortunately, I work retail, and the next couple of days I'm going to be gone from about 12 o'clock to about 5 o'clock. I won't be able to hear you.
Right.
But will you be on next week from, say, will you be on 12 to 1, or will you be on 1 to 2?
1 to 2.
Okay.
Yeah, all but...
Keep up the good work, and my cockatiel's sitting here watching you. She loves you. She's a very smart man.
A very pretty bird, too, may I add.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jim.
Right.
Telephone number 215-253-8877. Yeah, there were 2 days that WBCB had sold prior to my coming on, and they couldn't deny the opportunity for them to do their remote broadcast. Our telephone number 215-253-8877. And I do apologize for saying it is Barack Hussein Obama. No, I am not working Christmas. Not because I believe in the holidays that much, but that's a Sunday anyway, isn't it? Christmas is Sunday? No, Christmas is Thursday.
Next week, yeah.
Christmas is next
I
Thursday.
think.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I won't be working Christmas. Let me go back to the point at hand. On the radio station in Philadelphia, they constantly have Cardinal Regali on, who is the Cardinal of the City of Philadelphia Diocese. And I see nothing wrong with that at all. However, I more or less voiced a verbal complaint last night. Since the airways belong to all the people, I never hear on that program, which has no ratings, the Giordano program, I never hear a rabbi at a regular time on that station, on his program. I never hear a Muslim. I never hear a Jehovah's Witness. I never hear a Seventh-day Adventist. I never hear a Mormon on a regular scheduled program. And apparently it doesn't bother too many people except me. Now, under the fairness doctrine that most of the talk show hosts are afraid of, you would not be forced to. But are you really serving the listening audience of a radio station that is heard in 38 states in Canada that they brag about, when you constantly present one religion, one clergyman, on one program, day after day after day after day, week after week after week after week? I would like to hear a Presbyterian, Protestant, some other Christian member, or maybe a variety of religions in America. There are 110 religions in America, you know, that enjoy tax-exempt status. And yet it is so mind-boggling that it's the reason that I wanted to get the hell out of this business and not listen to radio, not listen to the news, and maybe go back to some serious drinking. Howard is on the air at 215-253-8877. Good evening, good afternoon, Howard.
Do you see my definitions that I put up there on the chat room for legal and lawful?
No.
Well, legal's got lots of definitions in it, and I'll read it to you, and I'll tell you what the difference is. I always hear that word legal and lawful. Somebody says, well, something's legal and something's lawful. But let's look at the definition of lawful. It's right down there. My Nick is annoyed, which is not a surprise. Lawful, that which is not forbidden by law. That's pretty simple, but think about it. What is the ultimate law? What is the ultimate end law in the United States? The Constitution, right? And you've got legal, which is that which is created by statute, by Congress, by ordinance, which really isn't a law. Here's what I'm getting at. You said it about 10 minutes ago. You said the Constitution gives you the right to change it. I disagree with that statement.
No, I'm merely pointing out what is in the Constitution the ability to change it through referendum.
Listen to why I disagree. There is nothing in the Constitution that gives you nor me any right whatsoever. You say you have a right to bear arms, you have a right to free speech. The Constitution does not give me rights. The Constitution, up to the 14th Amendment, says to the government, hey government, this is what you cannot do. There was a marked change in the Constitution after the 14th Amendment, because I fully believe that the 14th Amendment took every single one of us, turned us into United States citizens, and if you read what the 14th Amendment says, it quite clearly says that no state shall abridge the privileges and immunities of a United States citizen. Well, I thought I had rights. And up until the 14th Amendment, I did have rights. And my rights were not given to me by any constitution. My rights, in fact, I'm originally a citizen of Pennsylvania, which was party to creating the federal Constitution. So how can the created be more powerful than the creators? The Pennsylvania, the 13 original colonies created the federal Constitution. The federal Constitution was a document that said to the federal government, hey, here is the law by which you operate under, because we're the sovereigns. We tell you what to do, and you don't violate it. And if you look at the amendments up until the 14th, you'll see that the wording is not at me or you, it's at the government. It says the government shall not infringe on my right to bear arms. And you can look at the amendments in the Pennsylvania Constitution. They quite clearly say the same thing, that the government will not infringe, impose. It's a document on the government. And most lawyers don't even understand this concept. Then read the amendments after the 14th, and you'll see that what was lawful prior has now become legal. And I don't think that that is a difference that should be glossed over. I think it's very important because we have been really taken over by law. The law has enslaved us. It has allowed the people to really mount a silent coup against the American people. We've been strangled by the laws that they had created that clearly are not lawful. Remember, I asked the Federal Reserve guy, I always asked him, is the money lawful? I didn't ask him if it was legal, because I already know it says legal on the face of the Federal Reserve note. It says it's legal tender, but is it lawful? And I didn't ask that guy that question on one time or two times. I managed to find that guy 4 or 5 times, and then he never gave an interview in Philadelphia again. That's fine, because he would never answer the question. But here we've got a posse comitatus act, and I've talked about this before. Now, I watched the Alex Jones show. I think you do too. You mentioned it. And he's got a communique from the California Highway Patrol saying that they're doing, that the Marines are staffing sobriety checkpoints along the California highways. Well, then a couple local stations started making a stink. And so they came out with another communique saying, well, Marines aren't staffing the California Highway Patrol, but they said clearly when people went to see these checkpoints that they were manned by Marines. They were manned by marked vehicles with Marines on it. We just watched, you can see it on YouTube, we watched the Army and the Marines doing military drills in the city of Denver prior to the Democratic convention. Helicopters carrying 2 men on each side, holding onto the skids, dropping off at the top of buildings. And if you happen to be looking up and you could see the helicopter and they saw you, they would drop a little glow stick with an American flag or Army or Marines written around it. And that was really to simulate that they were dropping grenades. So while everybody's waving at them like absolute idiots, oh, hi, Marines up there in helicopters, they're dropping grenades on the American people. Simulated? I don't give a damn. We've got an act called the Posse Comitatus. It's the law, but it is being ignored by the government that considers everything to be a legality or an illegality, or the word that I hate the most, and I hear it all the time. Well, we have an amendment, a Fifth Amendment, but the word but is the most insidious word aside from compromise that I have ever heard in the English language. I abhor it. When you listen to, I don't know if you heard this one, but this is a good one to search, and I'll put the link up here in the chat room. The guy who's in charge of the NSA, that five-star general, that mealy mouth, whatever guy with the short hair, who stands up there and he tells everybody that the Fifth Amendment gives gives the government a reasonable right to reasonably search you. And a reporter was standing there, and he kept asking the general. He said, "General, it also says that upon probable cause." And the general stood there and actually said that he was sure that it didn't say that it said reasonable, that it only had to be a reasonable suspicion. No probable cause, reasonable suspicion. These bastards are rewriting my Constitution. It's my Constitution, damn it. It's yours, it's mine, it's theirs. And it's supposed to be the document that says to them, this is how you're going to act. And now what do we got? I'm going to tell you something. I'm not in America, and I'm glad that I'm not in America, because I'm scared to death at what I see going on there. When I see the Marines staffing checkpoints along the highways, and the California Highway Patrol thinks nothing of it than to put out a press release and talk about it. What in the hell's going on with my country? And what are the people doing there about it? Not a damn thing. They're smiling, they're listening to the damn football or the baseball, and that's all they talk about because they're so damn stupid that they're allowing this to go on. It's Nazi Germany happening all over again, and we are watching history unfold itself again, and we're doing nothing about it.
The question of semantics between legal and lawful was not what I was addressing. The final arbiter of whether something is legal or lawful, Howard, is determined by the United States Supreme Court. Unfortunately, the United States Supreme Court has reversed itself 156 times in decisions that they looked upon and then revised their final decision, the determination. The problem that we have is that I constantly said it, and I say it day after day on the program, that if the American citizens don't know their rights, then they don't have any. And most American people do not know their rights, and the government has usurped those rights under the guise of security and safety, and will be willing to give up both security and freedom, or rather freedom and mobility, to be safe. I think you're aware of the Golden Means Society that has gone to court any number of times and won in saying that I do not need a driver's license to be validated in 50 states. I'm an American citizen that has freedom of movement, and I drive my automobile. I have the right to drive it in Trenton, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Minnesota, Michigan, Massachusetts. And she has managed to stay out of jail on her constitutional grounds that she, by a state requiring a license to drive after you pass, which would be a reasonable test, which she agrees to, the government cannot stop her from driving in any 50 states, and yet they do. The people have given up their rights, Howard, and you know as well as I do that the more people give up their rights, the more they accept it as a reality. As you said, the Fifth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment has been circumvented by, well, we will give you immunity, but you will testify anyway. Now, if you don't accept the immunity to testify against yourself, you're then held in contempt of court. And under the law, you can be held indefinitely under contempt of court. I know a woman in New Jersey was held in contempt of court, imprisoned for 4 years, and then when the court finally decided that there was enough punishment, they wanted her to pay $32 a day for costs and subsistence. It was in the John Mahalchik case. So if you read a book by Ferdinand Lundberg called Cracks in the Constitution, you will see that as great a document as the Constitution is, there were cracks in there for the government to circumvent it. And maybe that's one of the reasons, Howard, that the legal profession goes along with this thing, because they've read the book. They know that the Constitution although it is the greatest document ever written for people to be free, has cracks in it where you could put a tractor trailer through and take away the rights of people.
But I'll tell you how you fill the cracks. You fill the cracks at the end of a barrel of a gun. And when people ask me, especially in foreign countries, and ask me, why do Americans love firearms? Why do Americans have guns? I tell them quite plainly, the reason Americans have guns is not to protect themselves. It's not to protect their homes. It's to shoot politicians who have become tyrannical. And if you don't believe that, you read any of the constitutions of any of the original 13 colonies, and it's quite clear. Pennsylvania's constitution says clearly, if you don't like the government, you have the ability, you have the right to abolish it.
No, it says
and
it
put
in
it as you see fit.
it says in the Declaration of Independence and also in the first. But the crack of the Constitution is that to prevent this killing that you advocate or you suggest, I won't say you advocate it, you have the right of election. And if the public is too dumb to remove these scum from office, then they deserve the government they get.
Well, what happens when it becomes tyrannical, or what happened in our history when it was tyrannical? When King George was tyrannical.
The public will march to the drummer under the Constitution or in the Declaration of Independence. Most people, Howard, would rather suffer indignities and shame and guilt than to do anything about it. I object strenuously to putting on a seatbelt. I do not want to be constrained in the automobile that I have to have a certain type of scissor to cut that belt to get out of the car if I'm involved in an accident. I hate the restrictions that I have where I'm doing something perfectly legal, sanctioned by the state of Pennsylvania, and that is to imbibe an alcohol that is mind-altering, sold by the state, and then get in my car and be stopped by some state officers saying, why did you drink the stuff that the state sanctioned? This is total insanity, is it not?
Well, it's all insanity.
Well, this is, but this is...
Do you know what? Are you familiar with a representative by the name of Sam Rohrer?
Oh, sure.
You've heard?
Sure.
You've heard of him? I'm going to send you a letter from Sam Rohrer. I'm going to email it to you, but I want to read you just one paragraph from this letter, and it's about the whole issue that you just brought up about the right to travel. The lady who doesn't have a driver's license.
Peggy Dietrichson.
This is what Mr. Rohrer wrote. He wrote this to a judge, Judge Streitel, and here's the one paragraph where he writes this. And listen to what it says. While I'm not a licensed attorney, I've asked a member of my staff who is a Pennsylvania licensed attorney to examine Mr. Ryle's understanding of this issue, meaning does he or does he not require a driver's license? The conclusion reached by my staff member was that Mr. Ryle has thoroughly researched the issue and has based his arguments on solid legal precedent. I have also performed my own in-depth research over the years, and I, too, have reached the conclusion that Mr. Ryle is on solid footing. The crux of the issue is whether Title 75 can properly be applied to an individual. And within an individual's right to liberty is the inherent right to travel. And he essentially says that Title 75, which is the Motor Vehicle Code, does not apply. It only applies to commercial vehicles and commercial use of the road. But here's where something you also said a little while back. She agrees to it, or somebody agrees to it.
That's right.
And so when you go in and you sign the license, you agree to it. And when you take your child and you take them into school and you sign the papers to put them in the government school, you agree to make the government really the owner of your child, not you.
It's the surrogate parent.
You give up your rights. And in this society, you give them up by the stroke of a pen all the time, because nobody ever reads any of the documents put in front of them. Let me leave you with a last little bit of wit that you might find funny or interesting or I don't know what. I used to get annoyed like hell at going into doctors' offices and also other places where they'd ask me all sorts of questions, and they'd want to know all this information that was none of their damn business. When it came time to signing the paper, I always put an expiration date next to my signature. You want to make somebody go nuts? Sign your signature and put an expiration date next to it. A year, a month, 2 years, doesn't matter. Drive them up the wall. They say, you can't do that. I said, I just did. It's legal. You're stuck with it. Why would I give you my signature in perpetuity? Stuff it. Here's
Howard.
my signature. It's good for a month.
Thanks for calling, babe.
You're welcome.
Howard has researched the law, and these are technical things that the law
Have another call?
get involved with. I'm Irv Homer, and what Howard said on that last thing was, he said it's the precedent. Now, precedent law means they go back to the case before. They don't go back to the original Constitution or the original decision they go by what the previous court decision was. Those court decisions have been reversed. Let's go to the phone again at 253-8877, area code 215. Good evening.
Hello, Irv. This is Arlene. Am I on the air?
Yes, you are.
Oh, okay. Let me turn this speaker down real fast. I didn't realize you were coming on that fast. I'm going to disagree with you on seatbelts.
Okay.
Let me tell you why. I mean, you can do whatever you want in your car, but let me tell you why. I worked at Moss Hospital before Moss Rehabilitation Hospital in Philadelphia, which is attached to Albert Einstein Hospital,
Right.
before seatbelt regulation became law. And the reports were pouring in from independent agencies, not government agencies, about head injuries that happened when people did not have seatbelts on. I had no car, it didn't have seatbelts on in it. I went and got seatbelts installed for my children and myself in the car. But one of the so there is a chance of a more severe accident and head injury when you don't have a seatbelt on. If somebody is injured that badly, those are catastrophic injuries when you have a head injury. And eventually, even when people do have insurance, and most people would not have enough insurance to cover that kind of a head injury, that cost falls on the rest of the people. So that's the reason why the seatbelt regulations were passed.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. You're not going to get an argument from me on that, Arlene. In fact, when I said that I resented wearing seatbelts, I recall making a personal appearance at the automobile complex near the airport. And this lovely lady walked up to me wearing a mink coat with her mother, and she had mentioned that she wasn't wearing a seatbelt at the time of her accident, and pointed out the problems that she had. I do not say that seatbelts don't work. I do not say that seatbelts shouldn't be in automobiles. What I resent is the fact that I'm required by law to protect myself. Now, if I am caught, say, in an automobile accident without wearing a seatbelt, the insurance company has the right then not to pay any claim that may be imposed upon me. I would have to pay for that myself and probably go broke. I am willing to take the risk so that the taxpayer, the insurance company, doesn't have to pay for my injuries, and if necessary, let me die. But my freedom.
I
So
understand. I think we had this discussion around 20 years ago, Irv, when you were on another station.
Right.
But the point is that that's not what happens.
I understand.
What happens then is the cost is passed on to the government, which is we the people. So you may be willing to take that risk.
Okay, then let me say this, because I've been in this discussion many times, Eileen. I do not see any purpose whatsoever, under the conditions that exist on the highways today, to have an automobile with 250 horsepower that has a speed of 140 miles an hour. But to protect me, because the public is crazy and will buy automobiles up to 500 horsepower with 12 cylinders, 8 cylinders, 6 cylinders with turbo drive, and then put safety features in the car, it would make more sense to me to make an automobile that I first drove that went 60 miles an hour, that had 85 horsepower, so the impact of an automobile accident did not cause the magnitude of damage that these things cause today. Why do I have a car sitting in my driveway that goes 140 miles an hour with 325 horsepower engine with a turbo drive on it. Where in the hell am I going to go in Bucks or Delaware or Montgomery County with that amount of power in an automobile?
So that you can, when you get on the turnpike to visit me in Lehigh County, you can avoid the big tractor trailers that travel 100 miles up and down the northeast extension of the turnpike.
Okay, now I will respond to that. I have driven it.
With an inch behind me on my back rear bumper.
I understand. Then let's enforce the highways so that tractor trailers and buses and heavy commercial vehicles are assigned to certain lanes and are required to stay there. And in Germany, on the Autobahn that I've driven about 6 or 7 times in my life, there is no speed limit. Your car, now listen to this. This is what I mean. The car is rated for the power that it's got, for the speed it can go. If you have a little Ford Fiesta, which is a car that is sold in Germany and Italy but not sold here, you can on the back of your car, you ever see European cars with a 30 or a 60 or an 80 on it? A black and white tag? That's the kilometer speed that vehicle is allowed to go on the highway. So they rate the car and not the highway. We rate the highway and not the car. That's insane. I drove a Mercedes-Benz for 5 years, and I had the power of that automobile to go 160 miles an hour, and yet there was some little Ford something keeping up with me. The thing was shake, rattle, and rolling, and was going the same. The driving laws in America are insane, and also the restrictions on commercial vehicles. Our highways are not built for it. So that is my complaint. When they restructure the driving patterns of tractor trailers and buses and commercial vehicles and speed limit and also charge, it doesn't make sense for a person that has a Ford to pay the same license tag fee that I pay for a Mercedes-Benz. If I can afford a Mercedes-Benz, because I require probably more driving, a bigger load on the highway, I should pay more for a license fee than some person that has a family driving a Ford van or a Chevy van. Our whole system of highways, accident and insurance influence, and you brought it up yourself. The insurance influence dictates our policy on seat belts and safety regulations. So this is one of the reasons that, it's all inclusive. It's just like I said, well, I don't want to wear seat belts. So it's more inclusive than that. But I agree with you. Look, seat belts do save lives. However,
well, we agree on everything except for one thing then, or
that's the mandatory use.
Say what?
The mandatory use of it.
No. That we get the government we deserve, but I don't deserve the government that these other people, these doofuses, are inflicting on me because they're not educated or informed, and so I have to suffer under government abuse also. The abuse of power that's going on now.
I couldn't agree with you, and I thank you so much for calling.
You're welcome. Love you.
Love you too, Dom. Our telephone number 215-253-8877, 215-253-8877. Bob from Memphis says, Irv, was Rush Limbaugh caught up in the Madoff $50 billion Ponzi scheme? I read rumors on the internet. Well, what you read probably was a rumor. I don't know whether or not, Bob, Rush Limbaugh was caught up in it or not. I do know that a lot of the names of folks that have been caught up in that will only be evident by those people who are trying to reclaim the loss. Those people who are afraid to admit that they got bilked will never admit their loss, and he's home free on that. One of the comments I wanted to make on that, Bob, was that Bernie Madoff, happens to be a Jew. And if you take a look at the people that he screwed, the biggest percent were Jews and Jewish organizations. So for people to think that Jews are only out to attack Gentiles is a lie. He was a scum, he was a Ponzi scheme, and I cannot figure out for the life of me, in light of the fact that the whole Ponzi scheme was done at least 6 times before and reached national prominence in the news, for people to think that this guy could paying 10% interest on an investment when the highest rate of return they could get anyplace else, with the exception of gambling on the stock market, was about 4.5%. So I don't know whether Limbaugh was ever caught, but I guarantee you there are a lot of so-called bright people. Don't forget, the man was the former head of NASDAQ, In fact, he was the guy who invented NASDAQ. So he carried a lot of air of responsibility with him. And God bless people, they're very trustworthy. Look, I read the papers constantly and have a clipping service for embezzlement and fraud, mainly because I'm interested in how many people have been convicted of stealing from places of business for gambling debts. And you see everything there: priests, rabbis, people who run little leagues, home and school association people, treasurers of corporations. They all steal because they're basically honest people, but they caught up in this debt. You read about them buying new cars, taking vacations, paying their kids' college education. Money is an evil SOB. Money can do strange things to a lot of people. And it may be possible, but I guarantee you, I doubt very much if Rush Limbaugh has been caught up in that $50 billion Ponzi scheme that you'll ever read about it in the paper. I know I'd be too damn embarrassed to let people know that I was that dumb, to think you're going to get something for nothing. It also proves one very important thing, Bob. There is such a thing as people looking for a free lunch. People love a free lunch. That's why the casinos do so great when they're giving away complimentary nights and complimentary foods and complimentary drinks and complimentary everything else. I do not answer questions like the one coming up because the information is available in that. Irv, what is the difference between a state and a commonwealth? I will only tell you this: there are 3 commonwealths in the United States. Look it up yourself. I do not do people's homework for them on the air. I'm Irv Homer. Our telephone number is 215-253-8877, 215-253-8877. Let me go back to my problem I have with religion and state in this country. I, as a Jew, do not want to see a menorah, that is the 7 candles that you see, the candelabra, on the Judge Lewis Quadrangle in Philadelphia. I don't want to see it lit. I don't want to see a rabbi in a cherry picker lighting the lights for the 7 nights of Hanukkah. My religion, as I was taught it growing up as a young Jew in America, where my religion is, well, a sacrament. My relationship with God is above an open display in the public place. I resent the menorah on public buildings, public thoroughfares, anything to do with the public. I think all of these displays of religious icons is a disgrace and an embarrassment to the sanctity of the religion that people practice. And so we have this big conflagration out in the state of Washington, where there is a legal debate as to whether or not an atheist has the right to put up a sign on state property next to a krish, next to the nativity scene. And Megyn Kelly, who is an attorney on Fox News, I love her dearly. She's a fighter and knows her stuff, in my opinion, because I agree with her interpreting of the law. Her and O'Reilly constantly go at it, and she's right all the time. Of course, Riley's got a bigger mouth, so it may appear that he wins the debate. However, Megyn Kelly is no dummy, and she is right. And I remember a case, a tax case, that I was a witness in federal court, where the defense was trying to introduce something into the case. And the federal judge, a learned judge here in Philadelphia, said to the defendant, "I will not permit you to open that door so that you can go in there and present this part of your case as a defense." Well, by mistake, the IRS prosecutor didn't hear what the judge said, and so he opened the door for the defendant. Well, when the defendant said, "Well, Your Honor, the prosecutor just opened the door. Am I permitted to go through?" And the judge said, "No." That case was reversed. Once government opens the door, ladies and gentlemen, and permits something for some religion, some prosecutor, some defendant, then the door is open to everyone. It's hard to conceive because of the gut feeling that people have and the emotion with their religion and their God-given belief and all of those things. But as Megyn Kelly pointed out, as the governor in Washington pointed out, and she reversed herself, and for that, because of the bombastic she got from this idiot O'Reilly, who squashed his case with the sexual harassment of his producer, which I have the documentation in my file, but nobody one believes it because there's a no spin zone. See, people don't want to know the truth. You do not want to know the truth. But let me go back to this case in Washington with the Krish and the sign put up next to it on state property paid for by the individuals. The governor's opinion through our legal staff said, if you open that door, you've got to let all points of view be heard. Is that reasonable? If the state says you can do something, who is the state to say, well, you can't do it, but they can do it? And so by permitting the nativity scene to be on state property, the atheist said, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And there were 7 other different organizations or religions or Save the Whales or something. They wanted their signs to be there too. And this idiot O'Reilly, who people idolize like they idolized Hitler, don't forget, these idols that are being created by television, ladies and gentlemen, are using the same technique that every tyrant in the world has used. Hitler used it, Joseph Goebbels used it, Stalin used it, Kerensky used it, Trotsky used it. They all have used it. And they do the same. They've learned. See, they learned. You have it. They've learned it used to be called brainwashing. Remember with brainwashing? Well, that's what they do. They wash your brain out of all logic. And so Megyn Kelly, who was a pretty skilled attorney, shouldn't be on Fox News. She should be in the Supreme Court, in my opinion. Said, well, the governor opened it up. And when you open up something like that, you have to let all viewpoints be heard or seen. Now the governor, instead of saying that, she says, I'm removing all of them. Now she's under attack by the nitwit O'Reilly and others of his ilk because she did what I believe is the law. The state should not sanction, criticize, or play favorites with any religion in America. The state, in my opinion, should remain absolutely neutral. And that's one of the reasons, as a Jew, I resent the menorah on public display on public property, on public ground. That's my religion. It's none of your business. The nativity scene is your religion. It's none of my business. If you want that, put it on your lawn, put it on your building, put it any place you want to, and I will respect it. But I don't respect any religious icon of any kind on public property. That state, I want to be neutral from any influence whatsoever when that state passes laws, when that state makes me swear in or affirm, or if I want to be president of the United States as an atheist, I have a right to be one. There is no religious test. And one idiot on syndicated radio, I've seen Clinton walk out of church with a Bible and George Bush, but I've never seen Barack Hussein Obama ever walk out of his church with a Bible. So what? It is none of your business what God he prays to or what God you pray to or what God I pray to. That is in the state realm. The criticism that John Kennedy got because he was a Catholic. And that's a question. Can a Catholic compromise his religious belief to be the President of the United States? Can a Muslim? Can a Jew? We've been given a set of ideals, whether they're in writing or whether Howard thinks they're legal or lawful or illegal or constitutional. We've given them a set of principles to adhere to. They give all people the right to be immune from any type of persecution because the overwhelming group of people want it that way. And it's difficult to live that way with a neutral state. The state should have no race, religion, color, ideology, other than the laws that a group of free people are willing to adhere to without oppression, without persecution, and the right to protect themselves from those who try to take those things away from us. And I am fearful as Howard is, maybe for a different reason, of what's happening to this country. The ignorance of this country. The ignorance of the masses. The great people, great men, great women don't have the courage to speak out. Stand up to be different. The Ron Pauls, the Harry Browns, those people are willing to stand up and be counted and say it is wrong. If I infringe on your rights because I feel that my right is right, then you're in trouble and I'm both in trouble. I will grant you all the respect and dignity that you are entitled to for your belief, as long as you don't try to impose it upon me. And I want you to fight like hell to prevent me from imposing my will on you. And only that way, ladies and gentlemen, will we remain a free people. The rest of the world is looking at us instead of imitating us and demanding our freedom, our respect, our individuality, our diversity, in which every person is granted the right to be a free man. Maybe the rest of the world will copy us. But what I see, and as Howard said, I fear that we're starting to copy them. And who knows what the first 100 days will be after Barack Hussein Obama gets sworn in. I don't know. But if you people want to be free, you better spread the word of what America is, what it can be, what it should be, that this is not the end of America, but the beginning of a new America where there is an awakening of the people to say, I will respect my neighbor. I won't believe what he says. That's his belief. And he doesn't have to believe what I say. That's my belief. But I will respect him to give him every right that I have. And I want him to respect every right that I have. Maybe with this season, which is a fraud, peace on earth, goodwill to men, blah, blah, blah. If you don't believe it, go shopping and you'll see this peace on earth and goodwill to men, people, and the sales and the traffic and fingers to everybody under the sun. What a peaceful time of the year it is. Hanukkah is now, and Christmas, great peaceful time of the year. Idiots on the highway, parking lots jammed, fighting in every damn parking lot you see, pulling at clothes and gifts and toys and everything else. This is the peace on earth you want to celebrate? The sheeple of the world will be sheared and the wool will grow back again. And you'll be sheared again and the wool will grow back again. And that's why I refer to the masses as sheeple. You want to be sheared? You get sheared. The clippers ain't coming to me. Stay away from the shears and the clippers. I'm Irv Homer. Till the next time.